What's up, Scyushi Squad? We are back in small Trove, and today we're going to be talking about how you're going to build the Ice Sage. Or should I say Lava Sage? Whoa, is it hot in here, or is it just me? Okay, I'm sorry, I'll respawn for that joke, because I deserve death. Anyways, hi, how you doing? So today we're going to be talking about how you're going to build the Ice Sage for mid to end game. You know, we're kind of going through the tutorials. We've got a lot of these to cover just because I am in the process of getting married and being busy and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to end up going through these tutorials with you guys because these videos are generally very easy for me to end up pumping out. You know, I understand a lot about this game. I've been playing this game for, well, come sometime in October, we're going to be playing this game for like 8 years now on the channel. So, oh, somebody help me. But anyways, without further ado, let's get right into it. So the Ice Sage, generally speaking, is going to end up being fantastic. I cannot stress this enough. In the Delves, you are going to be very, very good as a boss killer. Not so good at speed farming. But most of all, the highlight of this class is going to end up being as a delve. You know, you can handle a group of enemies, no problem. You can handle bosses even better. But speed farming kind of slacks on this class nowadays. But generally speaking, there are ways that we can compensate for that. So first and foremost, it would end up being the subclass abilities. So generally, for Chongo damage, you're going for the sort of crazy Lunar Lancer subclass ability. If you want the extra light, you would use a Solarian ability. And I pretty much just always end up using the Mounted Cavalry as a subclass ability because it ends up giving me the extra movement speed on mount, which in this case is very, very welcome because it's consistent movement speed rather than relying on your Pyrodisc and your allies and triggering and all that crap, right? But generally speaking, you know, those are going to end up being your best options. However, there are others. You know, I've tested out with the Sparkle Grenade, and that one's actually pretty dang good. It does a lot more damage than you would think. But anyways, as far as your stats are concerned, you're going to be going for attack speed, movement speed on all of your gear. In the odd chance that you want to be a boss killer first and foremost, you're going to actually just swap that movement speed out for the crit damage instead. Just because that's going to end up making you deal a lot more damage. It's very significant, but you are going to end up losing a lot of movement speed, obviously. Ignore my gear, though, because I'm not rocking like super strong gear on this guy or anything. And then as far as the Ice Sage's hidden ring effect is concerned, so we got the 3 different abilities. So there's Nice Ice Baby, which I've heard from you guys is pretty much the best one. So the Big Chill, which is going to end up being our #1 ability that freezes everything, summons an ice crash on the player, and this ice crash changes the ground to ice. Then there's As Cold as Ice. While on ice, the Ice Sage gains additional crit hit chance and critical damage, which is weird because it seems like it would actually be more beneficial to have both of those abilities on 2 separate Ice Sages complementing each other. But that's a lot of coordination for a game like Trove where there is not much coordination that can even be done. So yeah, that one's just too random, too weird, too inconsistent. And then of course, Chill Out. So Frozen Ward triggers at low health. So you would end up getting your ultimate ability to just trigger on low health. However, even though that sounds really, really good, it has an internal cooldown. I don't know how long that internal cooldown is, but generally speaking, it's long enough that it's not very good, unfortunately. So yeah, I would end up using Nice Ice Baby. You know, that's what you guys always ended up telling me is the best option for this guy, because I've never really like fully committed to maining Ice Sage at any point in time. It's just that I know how you build characters in this game. Basically, it's, you know, it's just damage. It's not hard. And then for the banner, you're probably just going to be aiming for Leviathan torches. They're going to be your best option. I use Nitro Chaser just because it's quick, it's easy. I don't bother trying to fight Leviathans consistently. Generally speaking, though, I have my Permatorch or the Permanent Torch. You know, that's what that means. Just because people always ask, like, what's a Permatorch? It's a very rare chance when you defeat a Leviathan and open the chest that you can end up getting a permanent version of their torches that does not ever despawn. Now, for your ally, you can end up using a handful of them. You can use like chromatic, or not chromatic, chromatic Cubesley and so on and so so forth. But generally speaking, your Delves allies are going to be the best ones. There's going to be Aviar, which will give you the increased movement speed and stuff. But Puck is probably going to end up being the main one that you'll use just because of the sheer amount of extra damage. Some other alternatives is going to end up being Prefect Penguin. That's going to be your best movement speed one before you end up getting to the Delves one. And then there's going to be Chromatic Cubes, which is the cooldown equivalent. However, neither of these allies has the light stat value on them, which again, the light stat is going to end up being your armor penetration and is required for the end game. I always skip over food. I know some of you guys are like, what about food? Food doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But otherwise, just throw any food on. I mean, it all just gives light, right? Anyways, for your emblems, that's going to end up being options are Trailblazing, Arcane Emblem, Unyielding Emblem for survivability, Chromatic Emblem for damage. If you're early game and you're struggling, Sure Strike can end up being really, really useful to give you that extra crit hit. But generally speaking, for end game like U11 and so on and so forth, you're going to need the Arcane just because of the high damage increase that it gives you. Not to mention, again, you are primarily building this character towards the Delves and so on and so forth. So those would be the options that I would pick. For your Flask, you know, this one's way easier because you can basically just use Death Defying. Not really any reason not to use Death Defying, you know, until maybe when you start getting really, really high up into the stats and you have like over 100% crit hit, you can actually end up getting some max health in your gems, and then you can kind of swap off Death Defying. Until you go to U11 and everything starts one-shotting you again. Vial of Unleashed Power, I mean, sure, whatever. If you really want to try a weirdo build, and then Conjurer's Crucible is going to pretty much be the only other option other than Death Defying. But even then, Death Defying, it's the easy one. It's just quick. It's to the point. Now, we're going to kind of briefly just talk about the stats that you're aiming for as a mid to end game player. Keep in mind that these stats are going to end up varying quite a bit. I'm most of all just going to be sharing with you guys the minimum stats that you want. So minimum damage, base value 80,000. That's probably going to end up being pretty good for your midterm enemies. And then crit hit, you want to have that at minimum 50%, maybe 60%. Anything higher than that is always going to be welcome. And then crit damage, you want to have that at 800% at the minimum. And then you'll be able to handle most mid-game enemies. And then you just kind of got to slowly inflate those numbers to compensate and be able to deal with a lot more late-game enemies. Now, as far as the gems are concerned, I don't have any gems on this character, so let me just swap over to my Shadow Hunter just because this is the best option and let you guys know, you know, just swap the physical damage out for magic damage. I don't have a set of crystal gems for magic characters yet. You know, I'm gonna work on it, but it's gonna be a very slow process. So anyways, for the empowered cosmic gem, you have two options. You can use Berserk Battler, which is going to be your best option because, again, Ice Age is built towards damage. Vampirium is not bad just because it gives you a lot of life leads, and you know, that can end up being very, very good if you need that extra survivability. But because of the way that the Ice Age is set up, it might not be ideal versus just taking raw damage and killing everything as quick as possible. For the Pearled stats, you're going for 3 Pearls Light on all your cosmic gems. It's going to be very difficult to do this, especially if you're early game, but that is the main primary goal because the more light value you have, the more of your damage sings true towards the defenses of enemies in the late game, which ultimately means your damage go burr. Then you want to end up having magic damage and crit damage as the alternate stats on all of your cosmic gems, okay? And then for your empowered gems, you got a couple options. Pyrodis is going to be a must, I would say anyways, just because that movement speed is going to end up coming in clutch. You could use Volatile Velocity if you really want to. Volatile Velocity is going to end up giving you basically a 40% increase in your range for your shots. But generally speaking, most enemies that you're fighting aren't going to end up being that far away for you to take advantage of it. That's why this is a god tier gem on Shadow Hunter, for example, just because you can shoot through walls. But yeah, and then for your class gem, I mean, obviously you want to end up getting this because basic attacks now freeze enemies for 1 second on the first hit in addition to their existing chill, and hitting enemies 3 times in a row with the base attack causes them to explode, taking additional damage. This is where a lot of the Ice Sage's damage ends up coming into play. Obviously, you can actually use all of your abilities on Ice Sage. Generally speaking, your right click's really, really good for taking care of groups of mobs, but that class gem ability is going to end up being absolutely god tier for you for the Ice Sage. And then otherwise you could end up using Cubic Curtain just because that'll give you some defensive capabilities. Pyrotus is the only one that I would say is a must, just because that movement speed is going to end up being really helpful. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter too much, because again, Ice Sage is most of all going to be focusing on being a boss killer, so movement speed isn't going to be that big of a deal. Now, for your lesser gems, I always, you know, the easiest way that I can explain this is you want to end up having these as a 3x3 ratio. So 3 of these lesser gems are going to end up being the exact same as your Empower gems, which is 2 pearls magic damage, 1 pearl crit damage, and no pearls into crit hit. Ignore the max health. And then 3 of your lesser gems are going to be the exact same. And then your other 3 lesser gems are going to be slightly changed. So they are going to be 2 pearls crit damage instead, with 1 pearl magic damage, no pearl crit hit. You can end up swapping out some of the crit hit for max health as you get to the end game and have 100% crit hit, sure, but until then it's not really that big of a deal. And you do not have to follow this to the letter. This is just an easy to remember recommendation that your 3 lesser gems are the same as your Empower gems, and then 3 other lesser gems are just going to swap 1 pearl over. Generally speaking, it's not that big a deal if you got 3 pearls in crit damage here, 3 pearls in magic damage here, and so on and so forth, because generally speaking, you're still going to end up seeing the benefits of the extra damage. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that my ratio is a little bit off, because I know that I should be getting a little bit more crit damage in that regard, especially if you're trying to end up handling some of the late game delves. But beggars can't be choosers when it comes to those types of things, and frankly speaking, it really doesn't matter as much as you would think. Anyways, that's going to do it. Hopefully I ended up covering everything with the Ice Sage, and if I missed anything, you can always sound off in the comments, and I'll try my best to catch the comment if I can. However, I'm very, very busy at the moment, so I would appreciate if on your way out you would smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have a wonderful day, everybody.